Welcome back to another episode of the podcast, From the Depths of Darkness to the Light of Success. I am your host, Chris Swick, and on this podcast, we talk about mental health, addictions, ADHD, eating disorders, really anything anyone's afraid to talk about. We talk about it on this show today. Let's make people not afraid to not talk about these things. I believe everyone's story is valuable at the end of the day. Doesn't matter what walk of life you come from. You're all welcome on this platform. I believe you should share your story. It helps build your confidence and gets your story out there. And in return, you can help someone learn from your story as well. Before we get going, though, head over to the YouTube channel with the same name as the podcast. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, head over to Apple or Spotify, hit follow, leave me a rating or a review. Really helps the show grow. And hit me up over on Instagram if you want to check out my personal stuff, podcast, and just little tips and tricks for mental health and ADHD. It's all over there on my Instagram page at Depths of Dark Side. With no further ado, I'd love to introduce to you my next guest. I got Joe Kuttler coming all the way, originally from Baltimore, but he's over in Massachusetts right now. What about those Red Sox, man?
Well, it's not my team, but I guess they're doing pretty good this year, huh?
What's Joe all about before we get going, though?
Oh man, that's such a deep question. What am I all about? I don't even know how to answer that. Yeah, just trying to put myself out there. I've got this book that we're going to talk about. Yeah, I guess getting to a place of vulnerability and openness, and hopefully other people gain from sharing my story.
Before we talk about that book, we'll talk about that in a little bit. What is the most important thing you have learned this year about your mental health?
It's a good question. I think for me, like publishing the novel and going through what I've been going through in my life, one thing I've learned is that it's this idea of the balance between like selfishness and generosity. And I think I'm starting to learn that there is a generosity to even being selfish. And what I mean by that is sometimes if you're in a conversation with someone else and you have this story that you think that they would benefit from hearing because they're at a certain point in their life, right? Where hearing a certain story might help them out. And so telling that story, you might feel a little selfish, like you're making the conversation about you and you're bringing the attention yourself. But I think that if you do it in a way where you're really trying to help this person through what they're going through by relating your own experiences, it feels a little backwards sometimes to be open and for that story where you really are talking about yourself for it actually to be a generous act in a way. So I think that's been something that I've been working on for myself. And I think that once I've pushed through that barrier, I've been able to grow into, and I think it's been enriching for me to be able to share myself and to see that other people kind of appreciate the stories I've been telling them.
It definitely is. Battling our mental health and mental illness is definitely a balancing act, just like at the circus. Sometimes
Mhm.
it's a three-ring circus going on in my head some days, man. I don't know about yourself, but I can, speaking from my own experience, some days it's just thoughts are going this way, that way, up, down, and all around it. It's just a crazy circus up there some days. And it's a
Yeah,
crazy
for sure.
balancing act.
For sure. And it's like there's all these kind of thoughts and second thoughts and like things that you can get stuck in this thought loop sometimes of should I say this? Should I do this? And it's just you're in your own head so much that sometimes you gotta just let it out and just be genuine and be open with people.
So what were some of your earliest struggles with your mental health or with mental health in general?
That's a good question. I think that for me, mental health kind of comes down to like having meaning in life and feeling connected to other people and feeling like my life has value in a community of people. And I think that's an everlasting human balancing act, like you're talking about, is a lot of times you feel connected to people, sometimes you feel more lonely, and it's kind of this balance of not falling into the loneliness. Cause sometimes when you get down on yourself, you wanna retract a little bit and stay to yourself, and you have these voices like, "Oh, no one wants to hang out with you, no one wants to be with you." And just these voices in your head that are attacking you, and you gotta separate yourself from them. And because people do want to be around you and they do want to share the joys and pains of life with each other. So I think it's just about getting through that and not getting into the mindset of I have to be alone. And when you get down and putting yourself out there, even when it's hard.
For sure, it definitely can be hard and can be very tricky putting yourself out there, especially getting vulnerable, sharing that story of
Mhm.
yours, thinking to yourself or talking to yourself, what are people gonna think? Are people gonna hate me even more than they do right now? You know, meanwhile, no one hates you. People are here to support you. There's most of the people out there are very genuine and kind and compassionate. There is the odd person that can be an asshole out there, and that's like anywhere you go. It doesn't matter where you go. There's always gonna be those assholes, but that's okay. Let them hate. Let them do what they want. Let them say what they want at the end of the day. Don't let them bring you down. Their negativity doesn't need to bring you down at all.
Yeah. I
Do
think
you
and oftentimes, like, people act in that harsh way. A lot of times a draw for attention, right? So it's just childish lashing out where, something within themselves, they feel a lack of meaning or isolation, right? So they're just trying to it's like the youngest child is just trying to get attention. Sometimes you just have people who just want to be mean or whatever it is, right? But like a lot of the time, if you're really genuine with someone, you reach out to them, they'll appreciate it and you get past those kind of mental or emotional barriers people put up and just relate to them.
and have you had your struggles with isolating as well? And what would you do to stop yourself from isolating?
I think that it's definitely something that I've struggled with. So one of the things is just like writing and having a creative outlet for sure has been very good because sometimes I haven't been in that place where you feel down about different things that are happening in life. And it's good to be able to have an outlet to relate those ideas and emotions and go through them with yourself in your own head and just get it down on the paper and it feels like a release in a certain way. And other times just been being lucky, being surrounded by good friends and family and people are looking out for you and just having someone, ask if you're doing okay, maybe on a day that you're feeling a little down and a little less energetic than usual. It's definitely a special thing and something not to be taken for granted to have those people in your life for sure.
You talk about writing there earlier. Um, has that really helped you get out of your shell? You said that you really like to get creative. Is it mostly just with writing, or is there other things you like to get creative with as well, Joe?
I do like to dabble with photography when I travel, take pictures. But yeah, I think writing is, and just like storytelling is probably my main kind of creative outlet. And it's a way I really process ideas and emotions. And if I have an idea that is begging to be fostered and to advance with it and explore it in a certain way, then trying to turn that into a story and kind of synthesize that idea and drive in a certain direction with it has really helped me to I both just release emotions and ideas and feelings, but also to like figure out some things that I was trying to figure out throughout my life.
And what were some of those things that you were trying to figure out earlier on?
I guess I would say we could tie into the book, but I wrote this novel, The Happy Hotline, and one of the
Well, first
main
off, what drove you to write the Happy Hotline?
Yeah, so I wrote it to explore these ideas like we are talking about and these feelings. I was coming off of a pretty tough breakup and I had my own kind of psychological things going on where like my parents got divorced when I was pretty young and my parents, both sets of grandparents got divorced. And so I had this thing in my head where it was like I'm destined for like my love not to work out, my those relationships not to go where I want them to go. So it's just messing with my head and I was having a tough time of it. And
Would you say you would self-sabotage in your relationships though because of the psychological things going on in your head with your parents and grandparents being divorced?
yeah, that's a great question, and that's something that I've considered a lot. I'm not really sure. I think that I try and err on the other side where, like, in my relationship, I would always try and be very generous and be very giving and make sure that I was doing everything to make my partner very happy. I think that part of that was like overly dedicating myself to this person and not keeping enough of a balance for myself and my own pursuits, which I think can be destructive to a relationship because people don't want someone else to be completely relying on them. Like a good relationship, I think, is having your own individual path and then your intertwined paths. And hopefully you gain the balance between all of it, which is
Well, interrelationship when two people get together as well, but also have your separate entities or whatever you would like
yeah,
to call them.
for sure. Yeah. And I think that It was definitely trickier for me to operate with and something that I've grown from just reflecting on it. Yeah, and writing this book was definitely a part of the process for me. So yeah, coming out of the breakup, like I was saying, I was having a very hard time. And this question of is life worth living if it's so full of pain and disappointment and all just the bitter realities of life that we go through was something that was just an idea in my mind. And I wanted to figure out really whether life was worth living. It's this everlasting question that humans have had. So my way of doing that was writing this novel, The Happy Hotline. And the way I did that was by it's really dark, and that's why I really liked the name of your podcast, The Depths of the Dark Side, because it really I think my book relates to that. But so it's really dark idea where there's this suicide hotline operator who has this epiphany where he realizes that all the callers are really suffering and miserable, and he accidentally leads a caller to commit suicide. And he has this epiphany where oh, maybe it's better that this caller doesn't have to suffer anymore. Maybe it's good that he's relieved of his suffering by having committed suicide. So then he goes on this nihilistic quest to try to convince all the callers to commit suicide. It's a very dark idea. And then the book's kind of about this one guy who figures out what he's doing and tries to stop him.
So
So it
why does he
becomes a
wanna
battle.
convince why does this character wanna convince them all to commit suicide? Is that his end goal? Let's have everyone commit suicide then?
Yeah, yeah. It's just a character, and or really for me, it was the embodiment of this idea that life isn't worth living and that it's full of pain. And so the best way out of it is to not have to deal with the pain and to kill yourself. So having a suicide hotline operator who really they're controlling, or I guess the fate of life and death is in their hands, was a perfect character to explore that idea with because he is such a crucial role. And luckily for us, right? And everyone who calls in, they really handle their job, which is an incredibly difficult job, very well and expertly. But it's definitely a crucial role. Life and death really is in the balance every day.
Most definitely. So why the happy hotline though?
Yeah,
If
that's a
if
good
there
question.
wasn't many happy endings,
Yeah, yeah. So the book's pretty satirical, and so the Happy Hotline is so that's the company it works for, and it's a little bit of a satire on kind of the health and wellness industry and how everyone's always it's always if you were to picture a yoga instructor or someone on the what they call the bicycles, the cycling in a room spinning class, the instructor's all bubbly and smiling and always positive. And so it's play on that where it's like people are saying the sun will come out tomorrow, everything will be better, life is amazing, you should smile and enjoy it. And it's a certain kind of like to me, it comes off as condescending sometimes, where it's you're always so positive and so happy, but
almost positive toxicity, like
exactly, yeah, and that's
and
why.
and I had some traits of that, years ago or even within the last
Mm,
couple of years, but it's not always about unicorns and rainbows and everything
for
like that.
sure.
There's a dark side to everyone, I find.
Yeah, that's why I appreciate your podcast because it really the idea is to be genuine and delve into that place. And I think that people don't respond well to this overly positive cheeriness because sometimes you have to just say life. Sometimes life sucks, and we have to be able to get to that place of acknowledging that sometimes life just is pretty brutal, or just like sad or a little painful or whatever it is. You have to get to that point of acknowledging that it is dark sometimes to be able to say, "Okay, what can we do about that?" Right?
That's so true though, like, what is there to do? You can't always be positive. There is and I don't mean to be negative either, but you're not always feeling happy. You gotta really share your feelings. Get those feelings out that are bothering you, because if you leave them sit and fester, that's where it can lead to the isolation or the suicide ideation and those types of things. Because we all do care about each and every one of you. I do at least. Care about you all, and I wanna see everyone succeed. If you're struggling, reach out.
Yeah,
Don't
absolutely.
call the happy hotline, though. No,
No, no. Yeah, yeah.
I can have some sick, twisted humor too. So what grounds you though, Joe, when you have to make a tough decision in life?
It's a good question. I think that for me, something that I've found great meaning in is So I tried the whole university thing, spent a year in college, and really it was not. I really like to be outside and work with my hands, and so I've gotten into some farming, and right
That's
now
the
I'm
best way
learning.
to learn, man. I
Yeah,
working with my hands or my brain.
yeah,
Not so much learning in the class. I like to teach myself things, to be honest, like whether it's being creative with creating posts, little video clips, or doing this podcast. Those are the types of things that I just like to teach myself things and have fun and go at my pace.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, yeah, and I think
So what
there's a lot
types
to be
of
said
farming
for
was it that
trial
you were doing?
by combat, just trial by error, just learning from your mistakes and going out and doing it. Yes, I've farmed, and right now I'm studying timber frame building, and so to me, one
Now,
thing
what
that's
was it
been
that interested you in the timber frame building, Joe? I know you
well,
said you like working with your hands and those types of things, but
yeah.
is there something, like, in particular that it is with the timber frame building?
Well, one thing I love is working with a group toward a common goal, right? So we're all kind of everyone. So let's say we're building this cabin that's 20 feet by 16 feet and has their own posts and their own beam and their own thing they're working on. And so you do have your own individual projects where you're doing your own thing, you're working hard trying to figure it out. Then it's really cool to see it all come together and everyone kind of working on their individual parts and helping each other out when you have an issue. But then you see the whole cabin come together, when it's time to raise it. And that's very rewarding for me. Yeah, but I really enjoy working with wood. It's a great kind of medium to work with and just helping people have housing in places where they can live and feel really enriched by this beautiful wood that's around them. It's really cool. So doing
It's
great work.
amazing just to hear just like you said, the project come together and watching the walls go up piece by piece. It must be very rewarding for sure. It's like when we just finished a renovation at our new studio. You're actually the first episode that recording it, so
Oh,
there
that's
we go.
exciting. There you go.
Um, but and you're talking about photography earlier, like, my fiance's got a photography studio here, but it was just nice watching the pieces come together over the last couple months with the renovation from what it was to where we are now is amazing, and it's fun to watch that come together piece by piece, as you said. It's just like putting an episode together, putting a post together or some content together, and then just putting it out there and watching people like it or whatever it is. I don't even care if people like my crap. As long as I like and I put some value into it, I thought there was value in it. That's all that matters to me at the end of the day. It's not all about the thousands of likes that someone can get on a post or hundreds of comments. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's not all about the numbers.
And what's great is that if you could have a million likes or whatever it is, but if I think what's important at the end of the day is even if it's one person who really came away with something from a podcast you made or a post you made and they really get great insight, or maybe they're down that day and there's this conversation that they really related to and they really gained something from that. I think that's an incredible thing. And that's why it's really cool to be anyone can be a critic and anyone can say this isn't good, whatever it is, but it's hard to create something, put it out there and, but it's really rewarding because I think people appreciate that hard work and the dedication that goes into it, and it can really enrich their lives in some really powerful ways.
And it's just another part in life about being vulnerable, like putting yourself out there for everyone to see, whether it's sharing your story, like we talked about earlier, sharing a post, putting a new episode out. That's all ties into the vulnerability thing.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
vulnerability is strength, confidence. What about you?
For sure. Yeah, totally agree.
What makes growing exciting to Joe?
To me, it's a given. Like, what's the alternative? Just like stagnating, right? So I think that there's always, and every year I kind of have my New Year's resolutions. This year it was no sugar during the week. So I've actually been pretty good, surprisingly. Last year I had the same resolution and kind of the ice cream during the summer was getting me. But this year we're doing better. And
That's my go-to is ice cream, man. I love
yeah,
ice
well,
cream.
when it gets high, you want to go for it. It's very
Or there's
tempting.
some good gelato out there.
Yeah. But I think growth, it's such a small thing, right? Just like your sugar intake. But growth really can be the small things. And when you take the small things really
Well, you stack
seriously,
them, like
for
stacking
sure.
small goals or small attainable things or small things that you've achieved, those types of things. You don't have to shoot for the stars for
Yeah,
everything to do.
absolutely. And when you start small, like for me, just avoiding sugar, which what does that mean? Like not having candy, not having ice cream. But then I think to a certain extent, it also builds up kind of these larger things where it's like, all right, I'm starting to, what am I going to replace those snacks with? All right, so maybe I'll have cashews, maybe I'll have an apple, maybe I'll have a banana. So you really start to look at what you're eating and what you're putting in your body. So it's really just a small goal not to have sugar, but then you kind of branch out from that into how do I lead a healthier lifestyle? How do I improve my diet? And that's just from a tiny little thing.
And stacking those little goals or for like you said, or the no sugar thing, for example, that's also creating discipline,
Mm.
creating a routine as well. Those types of things. Now, what does a usual morning look like for Joe before he gets up and or before he gets going for the day? Do you have a routine in the morning to get yourself ready for the day? Joe's gonna have a good day.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I've been working on. I try and do some stretching and exercises every morning. My back is pretty not in the best shape. So I try and do a little exercise routine. And that's actually something that I was struggling with for a while. And I try and do it every morning, but I was having a tough time getting the motivation. And I worked out this deal with my buddy that's been really helpful, which is that he had his own routine that he was trying to do. And it was for his diet, and he has his own diet issues, and he had to drink celery juice every morning. The celery juice is pretty gross, so he was having a hard time motivating himself. So we
Celery
decided,
and lemons actually tell him it's good.
yeah, do both together.
Yeah, they get a little bit of
Interesting.
zest.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I'm not the biggest celery guy, so I don't wanna envy him his,
Celery and peanut butter. I used to love that as a kid.
wow, that's a wild
It's good though,
wild
man.
combo. Yeah. So we've been just for a mutual responsibility type thing and accountability. We've just been texting each other every morning after we do our routine. So I'll do a set or two of my stretching exercises. I'll text him and I'll get a response from him saying how he did with his routine. It's really helped to, we're talking like, I'm not just doing it for myself, but I'm doing it for myself and for my friend, which has been really incredible. Thing the importance and the merit of my routine.
You got that in the back of your mind too, that accountability partner, but, hey, if I don't text him, if I don't do this, I'm letting so and so down as well, so
For
it's
sure.
huge to have that accountability partner and that support system like you 2 are doing for one another. That's amazing, man.
Yeah, it's definitely, and what was surprising was how well it worked, which is like before I was maybe stretching once or twice a week in the morning. And since the two of us have been doing this routine, we've gone between 3 and 5 times during the week. And it really just clicked for us where it was really successful right away, which was surprising. But having that person where it's not only not wanting to let them down, but it's also wanting to inspire them, right? Where it's like, I need to do well, and then that'll inspire him to do well for himself. So it's a very powerful thing to be able to do for someone,
That's amazing, and keep inspiring one another to push to the next level sort of thing. But
for sure.
where can everyone find that book of yours? I know you've told me you're not too big on social media and those types of things, but where can everyone get that book if they'd love to get the Happy Hotline and read all about it?
Yeah, so it's up on Amazon. I have a copy here, the Happy Hotline. And yeah, it's on Amazon, the Happy Hotline. I have a website, Joe Kuttler, JoeKuttler.com. Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, but before we go, what's one inspiring piece that you could give to anyone listening out there today?
I think that what's inspired me the most is, especially going through these kind of difficult times in my life, is having people who really take the extra step to check on you when you're maybe not doing so well, or you're just looking like you're a little off. And that's definitely, like, I've been the beneficiary of that. That's definitely something that I'm trying to train myself to do, is to really, because we all have our own issues and things that are going on during our lives. And so it's hard to look outside of our own blinders that we have and the tunnel vision we have. So I'm really trying to train myself, because of the people who've inspired me, to try and really put myself in other people's shoes and really look for when those around me are doing so well, and when you maybe sometimes just like lending an ear, where it's like that people just want to be heard and want to say something that's bothering them. Maybe it's just going the extra mile and helping someone mow the lawn when they get bust their ankle or anything. It can be something very small to just help boost someone and make their day a little brighter, which is cliche to say, but I think we forget the power that we have and how much we can help other people. And so that's definitely what I want to drive toward. And my greatest goal to inspire people would be just to help them remember that really we all do have this great power to help each other out and to keep an eye out for each other. And yeah, like I said, I've definitely been a great beneficiary of that. And hopefully, if I can do that even for one other person, then I'll count myself very lucky.
That's amazing. You know what I'm hearing there in a few words, I'll sum it up there is random acts of kindness, people. Do something nice for someone today, tomorrow. Don't forget about that person, that might be struggling. You never know what someone's going through. So check in on your friends, check in on your loved ones. Say hello to that stranger walking by, smile, even a smile. You never know what you get out of someone. You might strike up an awesome conversation with someone. Might get a little bit about their story. You can share a little of your story too. It's always nice to go that extra mile for someone. Again, thank you for coming on the show today, Joe. And everyone, go pick up that book, Happy Hotline, over on Amazon, or go check out Joe's not podcast, sorry, website, joekuttler.com, and pick yourself up a copy of his book, Happy Hotline, everyone. Thanks again for coming on the show today, Joe.
Thank you very much.